make that noise, recording in progress. You just have to see it, I guess. I don't know. Boker Tov. Today's daf is daf days in קידושין. Let's begin the new mesechet, the last mesechet in Seder Noshim. We went for a four shlema for Elazar ben Ruma, Yosef Azriel ben Chaim Yichal, and for a fall ben Tzipora Fega Duba. So the Mishnah starts off. Ha'isha nikas b'shalosh brachim. Notice shalosh is lashon nekeva, not zachar. Shlosha is zachar. Shalosh is nekeva. Gemara is going to deal with this. Why does it lose lashon nekeva? So isha nikas, a woman is acquired. Also, what does it mean acquired? You acquire your wife? Yeah, that's what you acquire your wife. It's like you buy her, you own her, but she's also mekudeshes. Lashon of the chachamim, as we'll see, is mekudeshes, that she is sanctified or dedicated to you. She can't marry somebody else. That's the thing. A man can have many wives at the same time, but a woman can only have one husband. When a husband acquires her or marries her, that means that she's dedicated to him and to no one else. So there's three ways to make קידושין with a wife, to acquire her. Talking about קידושין, the first step of the marriage. And she acquires herself. What does it mean she acquires herself? So that she could marry somebody else, or she could stay unmarried. But it's up to her now. She acquires herself. She has her own possession. She owns herself in in two ways. Gemara is going to deal with lashon of shalosh and drachim. Why you talk about ways? Nikas, what are the three ways that she acquires herself? That can be acquired by a man? Nikas b'kesef shtar rabia. Three things. Kesef shtar rabia, as opposed to, as we'll see, chuppah. You can't just put her under the chuppah and say you acquire her that way. There's Adam that's under the chuppah, or taking her into a room. Don't forget, before Matan Torah, or today, how does a goy marry his wife? Well, how does a woman? Goyim also, one of the Zion mitzvahs Noach is adultery, right? They have to keep it. So what makes a woman dedicated to a husband by the goyim, or the same as we were before Matan Torah, B'nai Noach? What makes them? Simply, okay, come into the house, you're my wife, that's it. How do they get divorced? Leave, leave and lock the door behind you. That's all it was. Before Matan Torah, man wanted a wife, he took her into the house and said, okay, you're my wife. And if he got rid of her, he threw her out, he sent her away. There was no procedure. The Torah set a procedure for Jewish people that you have to acquire her in one of three ways. Kesef shtar rabia. All these things are going to learn that in the Gemara. How do you acquire with kesef? How do you know? You buy with kesef like you're buying a loaf of bread? Yeah, that's what the tabas is. That's how we do it today. Here's your ring with it. If it's not his ring, you can't acquire it. You acquire something with something which is your own. You give her something. So kesef is one way. Shtar, you could just write on a shtar, right? Mukadeshesly, even if it's not worth anything. Rashi says you write it on a piece of paper. Because of shtar, shtar kosev l'aniyar, apishen shavapruta. Or because he doesn't have to say anything, just can write it down. Or bia, actually having sexual relations. That's one way to acquire a wife. So again, we say the rabbis frowned upon that, and shtar is less of is also not common. We don't use it with a shtar. Maybe you have to hold on to the shtar, etc. People don't see it. So we use kesef. The kesef, how much kesef? B'shami omer dinner, b'shava dinner. B'shami says, well, we'll give her a lot of money. It's a whole dinner, not just simply a pruta. It's also learned out of Psukim, we'll see later on base. The pruta, b'shava pruta, any amount which is a minimal amount of money is a pruta, which is a copper, the smallest amount of copper coin or something worth that. Doesn't have to be actual money. Shava pruta could be an item that's worth that, like a ring. A ring is worth the money. That's why we were kaddish with a ring today. The kami pruta, how much is a pruta? You should know. It's 1/8 of an Italian isar. Isar was a coin, and there were 8 prutos in an Italian isar. How does she acquire herself? The get. Her husband gives her a get. Again, it's not of her own. This manazeh, she has to agree to it also. But Minatorah, he could just force it upon her, give her a get, then she's free herself, or misabal if the husband dies. So those are the ways those ways and no other way. It's not like the common law where they go to court if they want to go get divorced, and the judge determines that they're divorced. He gives them a gushpanka stamp, and he says you're divorced. Doesn't work that way. In Jewish halacha, you don't need a rabbi, you don't need a court. You need two Adam to see him give her the get. You have to write it down. That's what we just finished with Masechet Gittin. You have to write down the get and hand it to her or to her shliach. Uba misabal, if the husband dies, that's another way for it to go out. Hayavama. Reuben dies after having no children. His wife has to have Yibam with her if he had a brother. If there's no brother, then she's free. But if there's a brother, let's say he had a brother Shimon, how is she acquired to Shimon? Nikas Babia. That's the only way to do it. Minatorah. Midarabanan, Kesef or Shtar also works. We call that mimer. You do, but that doesn't give her a complete. She's not owned completely based on the Kesef or Shtar. Whereas opposed to a regular woman getting married, if it's just with Kesef or Shtar, that is a complete. She's complete. She needs a divorce now. She commits adultery. She's chayiv skila. In other words, she's completely acquired. You still need another step of Nisuin to be totally married. So there's different halachas, totally married, not totally married, different halacha, but she's totally belongs to the husband after Kiddushin. You need a get. She's not free to make somebody else. Today, when they have an erusin, we call it, bismanazeh, they get an erusin, that's just an engagement. It doesn't mean anything. Engagement party. They break off, it doesn't mean anything. You don't need a get based on that. You need a get only when there's Kiddushin. That's why today they do the Kiddushin and the Nisuin together at the wedding. So there's no issues if they break it off before. Nobody needs a get. Hayavama nikas for bia, so she's acquired only with bia minatorah. That completes it. In other words, if you did a kesef or shtar with the yavama, she's not acquired in the sense minaraisa at all. By a regular woman, she would need a get. This is all drabanan. If you did kesef or shtar, in other words, the rabbi said, don't just have bia with the yavama, take her in that way. First, give her kesef or shtar, and that's like a kedushin rabbanan, and you need a get to rabbanan based on that. But you'd still need chalitza if you didn't do bia yet. If he did bia, then she'd still be married to him, like his brother was, and then you'd only need a get if you wanted to divorce her. And she acquires herself either with chalitza. This is before the bia. The bia took place. You'd need a get. Or the husband would, or the husband either get or the death of Shimon, the new husband. If she's Yavam, meaning she's the Shemeres Yavam, she hasn't yet had Yibam with the husband, and the only way to get out of it is either with Chalitza or if the husband of the Yavam dies, Misayah. So those are the general categories. Now the Mishnah is going to deal with the Lashon that we're dealing with here. I said Mishnah is more like this. Aisha niknis, Ma'ishna hacha the Tani Aisha niknis, or Ma'ishna asam das Tani nishkar. So if you look, it's only 4 prakim in Kedushin. It's pretty short Masechet. In the beginning of the second parak, which is a big lumdisha inyan of shlichus. That's all the Gemara. The Gemara in Malchum and Beis talks there about shlichus. Shliach shalom kamosa. How do you know shlichus? So there it says Aish makadesh. Doesn't say nickness that she's acquired. It says a man is makadesh his wife either himself or with his shliach, and a woman is makadesh bo b'shlucha. Okay, Aish makadesh is bitok shinar bo b'shlucha. There it's talking about shlichus, but it says Aish makadesh. So what is marriage? The first step in marriage we know is called erusin, right? Or קידושין. Now, erusin is a lashon, at least in the Torah. You find that lashon by קידושין, you don't find in the Torah. That's all Rabban. The Rabbi said, because you are dedicating her to you, you're sanctifying her. She's not free to be with anybody else. So that's a lashon of קידושין. And over here it says lashon nixes, he acquires her. So she's acquired with kesef shtar bia. Why the difference of lashon? Use one or the other. Aisha nikis ma'ishna hacha the tani isha niknis ma'ishna asam tani ish mekadesh. Why? Why over there use lashon of kedusha and use lashon opinion? The answer is mishum nikaboy lemistay kesef, because the reason is because we wanted to tell you that one of the ways that you acquire a woman is with kesef, like we say the ring or shava kesef. How do we know kesef? Now, because it's kesef, and kesef, incidentally, this is like parenthetically. How do we know that kesef works? We didn't get there yet. We just said it works with kesef shtar bia. How do we know kesef? So later on, the Gemara in Gimel and Beis, tomorrow's stuff, and the following day, we're going to talk about that. It says kesef and on. How do we know kesef works? Gomer kicha mistei Ephron. We learn like Zera Shava from Avram's acquiring the field of Ephron, from the Maras Machpelah. There it says lashon kicha. Kisivach. It says over here when it comes to a man marrying a woman, kikach ish isha. Interesting. Here he's quoting the pasuk beginning of Parak Chaf Beis in Dvarim, Kikach Ish Isha, right? He doesn't like her. We had another on yesterday's daf. We had kikach ish isha, right? They were talking about the gittin, and she goes to a second husband, and he divorces her or gets rid of her, etc. That you taking her back. The first husband can't take her back. And we talked there about why is he, if she's a bad woman, he should divorce her, and the second guy is a bad guy because he took on a bad woman, etc. It's also kikach ish isha. So why don't we quote the same? But maybe this pasuk goes before. There we're talking about the whole idea of the first husband, the second husband, what happens afterwards. But the first time it says kikach ish isha, apparently is in Varm Chabeis. That lashon is before. I would think it's in Vayikra 2 somewhere. Kikach ish isha. But in any case, the lashon of getting married is kiyikach ish isha. So that's lashon of kicha. And ksiv hasam, and there it says what? By stay Ephron, when Avram acquired the field. Nasati kesef hazara, I gave you the money for the field. Kach mimeni, take it from me. So you have a lashon of kicha when it comes to stay Ephron, kach mimeni, and when it comes to kedushin of marrying a woman, you have kiyikach. So that's Xer Shava between the two. Okay, and therefore the Gemara, we're not really going to. This is not a discussion of here, like Rashi points out. We're just mentioning this incidentally because there's Xer Shava of kicha mistay Ephron. That's how we know that kesef works, right? He says, in other words, we're giving a whole discussion. Why are we doing lashon of kinyan? Because we want to talk about kesef. How do we know that kesef works if you can acquire a woman with money or with a shava kesef like a ring? Because it says kikach ish isha, and the sati kesef is kach many. Say Ephron, it says kicha, and here it says kicha, and there it talks about kesef. Okay, so kesef, just like kesef works by stay Ephron, it works over here too. Okay, so what? What does that have to do with kinyan? The kicha ikri kinyan. So we're not really. That's not our discussion. Is not the Xer Shava over here. Xer Shava is really later on tomorrow's daf where we're going to talk about how do you know that kesef works by Anisha because kicha mistay Ephron. But also he says the kicha ikri kin kicha is called the kinyan the siv hasoda sher kona Avram, the field that we just talked about that Avram acquired with kicha. It says asher kona Avram. That's a kinyan. Therefore over here it says isha niknas b'shlosha drachim. Why say lashon niknas and not ish mekadesh like in the beginning of Perek Beis? Because we want to talk about kesef. And how do we know kesef? From kicha mistay Ephron, and by stay Ephron it talks about kicha says asher kon Avram, or more explicitly a pasuk in Nach says inami on the base soros by kesef yiknu. This pasuk is better than asara shekanav, even though asara shekanav is really the one we're talking about. Kicha mistay Ephron, but in this pasuk we mentioned kesef also. Inami sodos by kesef yiknu. How are fields acquired with kesef? So that's even better. The Tosfos points that out. If you would just say Asar Shekan Avram, which is in the end of Bereshis, you could say maybe acquired it some other way, even though we said Nasati Kesef Sadakach Mimeni, maybe he gave the money, but that maybe didn't accomplish the acquisition. In other words, like we've said by metalklin. How do you acquire metalklin? With a kinyan, right? Hagbah, Mashicha. Is it money? No, money doesn't work, right? It's machlokus whether it's Rabbana or Daraisa, but it doesn't work. If you paid money for the bread, you don't acquire the bread. When do you acquire the bread? When you pick it up. So maybe the kinyan, even though Avram paid for the field, maybe the kinyan was with chazaka or with shtar. But in this pasuk, Inami Sados by Kesef Yiknu tells you that you can acquire fields with cash. Which is the halacha, right? You can acquire that the karkas nikna the Kesef shtar or chazaka. That chazaka mean making, showing ownership, like putting a lock on the gate or putting a gate up or something. So Inam Sados by Kesef Yiknu. So therefore, this answers our question. The question is, why did I mention this lashon of Disha Nikdas? She is acquired. Why not lashon Ish Mekadesh like at the beginning of the second parak? The answer is because we want to talk about kesef over here. One of the first of the ways it requires of kesef. How do we know kesef? From stay Ephron. Kicha stay Ephron. That's how we know that kesef works, because it says kikach ishisha kicha. By Stefan it says kach mimeni, and there it says kesef, so we know kesef works for a woman. And since that's really not what we're dealing with, just like since we're talking about kesef. Kesef is learned out, kesef Ephron, and Ephron says over there, kinyan, kicha, it's called the kinyan sar shekan Avram, or Sados by Kesef Yiknu. So when it comes to fields, that's called a kinyan. What Avram did with Ephron is a kinyan, and we learn out Sados Kichim stay Ephron. Therefore, we mentioned kinyan over here. So Tani Shedikus. So Vanessa also Mishkana. So if you're saying Kona is the Iker, Farshim say over here, the real discussion is the ikr, is the main thing when you get married that you're acquiring the woman, and once you acquire her, she's mamela mekudesha, she's dedicated to you, or is the ikr is that you're dedicating her, and therefore the totzah is the outcome is that you also acquire her. So that's what discussion is here first. So and it comes out that isha niknas, the key is the kinyan. So if that's the case, this is mishkana. If it says over here, you determine why it says kinyan, because it says kesef. And kesef is learned out from Stefan, from acquiring a field. And by a field it says yikne, that's a kich, it's called the kinyan. So say over there, ish kona. Why talk about ish makadesh? It's mikara tani lishna daraisa. First we talk lashon in the Torah, which is kicha, which is kinyan. That's lashon in the Torah. Sada kasef yiknu. Well, the self afterwards, telling us we could do lashon rabbanan. The rabbanan made up that word in קידושין. We call it קידושין, right? קידושין, all right? Chuppah קידושין. The rabbis made up that word. The Torah doesn't use the word קידושין for getting married. The Torah says kiikach yishisha, right? Taking her. You taking her. What's taking her? Taking her is like with kesef, and taking her is also how do you take her? That's called the kinyan. How do you do it with kesef shtarabiyah? Learned out of psukim. But it's called the kinyan. That's what the Torah talks about. The Torah talks about kinyan. The Torah doesn't talk about קידושין. Later on, it's lashon rabbanan. Umay lishon rabbanan. So why did the rabbanan make up the special lashon? The asala kuam kehegdish. The rabbi said, once you acquire her, you forbid her to be with any other man like hegdish. Hegdish you can't have enough from. Once it's hegdish, it's dedicated to the base of mikdash. Nobody else can touch her. The same way she is dedicated to you, and nobody else can touch her. V'nisnei hacha ish kona. So if that's the case, we understand why over here you want to say lashon kinyan. That's the Torah lashon, and that's based on kesef and kicha, and kicha is called the kinyan. Fine, we understand that, and we understand why over there it says ish makadesh, because that's the lashon drabanan. We want to tell you both things, the raisa and the drabanan. So why do you say over here isha niknes? But why do you say that she is acquired? Well, understand the man acquires her. After all, normally, what happens when an acquisition is made, when two people make an acquisition? I sell you something. What makes the transaction happen? That I want to sell it to you, right? Without my agreement, you can't acquire it. You can make all the kinyanim in the world. You can come over and pick up my, take the keys to my house and pick up my bread and that doesn't work. I have to want to do it. So over here, we're saying this man made the acquisition. She's giving herself to him. But why don't you say, just like, why say Isha Nix, why not the Ishkana? Because there we talked about how does she acquire herself back to get remarried, to marry whoever she wants, either with get or with Misa Sabal. So Tananami Reisha B'dida. Since there it has to say the Konas Atzma, she acquires herself. How does she acquire herself? So we talked about how she is acquired also. She's acquired this way and she acquires herself that. So V'disnei Ishkona Umakne. So say a man acquires her what? Keshdarbia, and he causes her to be acquired with get or misa. So I would say it that way. If you're saying that the seifa is, why does it say Oisha Nikas? Because the seifa is Bekonis Atzma, how she acquires herself. So we talked at the beginning also how she is acquired. That's why we talk about, we emphasize the noun as the woman, not the man. We don't say Ish Kona, we say Isha Niktas. Why? Because since it says in the Sefer, how does she acquire herself? So we talked at the beginning also, how is she acquired to the man? So say both ways on the man. He acquires her with three ways. Umakna, and he causes her to be acquired to herself the other two ways. Because they have one of the two ways that he causes her to be acquired is if he dies. Well, he didn't cause it. God happened it. He's not doing it of his own volition. From heaven it happened. If he didn't kill himself, you're right. If he would kill himself, then he did it himself, right? If he committed suicide, then he would. But normally that's not what happens. Normally God takes care of him. So that's not him doing it. He's not doing it. So therefore you can't say he is makna her to herself. He gives her to herself with getting or with death. Getting it works, doesn't work with Iboy Sema. Or I could tell you the reason it doesn't say Ish Kona. So we said the reason is because it says Isha is how she acquires herself, so it tells you how she is acquired. Iboy Sema eats on a Kona. If it would say Kona, I'm going to feel like I'm going to say that a man can forcibly marry a woman. like bandits or bad people throughout history who forcibly married people, right? They raped her, they took her into the house and forced her. If it's a Ishkan, maybe he could do even without her volition, just like a get mandatory, he can give it to her without her volition. So on Isha Niktas, therefore it says Isha Niktas to Midata to tell you that it's only if she agrees. It's only if she agrees, it's her own volition. Shalom Idatla, you can't force a woman into a marriage. By the way, by Yavama, it does work even if she doesn't agree. If a man, right, we had, remember at the beginning of the sixth parak talked about if he fell off the roof and fell on top of her, or if he raped her, chas v'chalila, he acquires her. You have to give her a get in that case. So because she's already there, she's already partially married because it's a seek already. But normally, if a man wants to marry a woman, she has to agree. If she doesn't agree, it's not a marriage. So okay, so that takes care of the Kenyan business. Why did it say Kenyan? Because it's like to tell you he acquires her first. We said it's based on the technicality is because we talk about Kesav, and Kesav is like Kicha, and Kicha is also called the Kenyan, and the field, buying field is called the Kenyan. So we talked about that's why Lashon Kenyan. Later on, I talked about קידושין, that's Lashon Rabbanan. And why the Lashon of the woman? Because the Sefer is how she acquires herself. So here too, or to tell you to make sure that a man cannot forcibly take his wife. That's fine. So we know now we've taken care of Kenyan. Why it says Lashon Kenyan? Okay. Why b'shalosh drachim? This is Aisha Niklas b'shalosh drachim. Why shlosha? The Cholatar Kul is always with Lashon Zachar. Right? Rashi says, Tosa says, listen to Shlosha. Here's Mishim the Cholatar Kul b'Lashon Zachar nemer. We always talk about Lashon Zachar, so I say Shlosha. Why talk about shalosh drachim 3 ways? Say 3 ways, which is shalosh is Lashon Keva. Let's say Shlosha, which is Lashon Zachar. Because it says 3 ways, right? In 3 ways, the Kodesh says 3 brachim. The derech lashon nekeva, derech is lashon nekeva. That's what he tells you here. The siv vodat lahem and teach them as a derech yelchu ba pasuk in Yisro. Vodat lahem as a derech yelchu ba v'esem aser sheyasum. As a derech yelchu go to the right derech. You know, people say you're off the derech, on the derech, right? Teach them the derech yelchu ba. Ba is lashon nekeva. So derech is lashon nekeva. That's why it says shalosh. That makes sense. Tanya, what it says, b'shiva drachim. There it says shiva drachim. Both kenas azav. Azav is a man who's a gonorrheic attack. He's only tamei if it happened naturally. But if it happened because he ate too much or drank too much, or he was sick, or he was carrying, or he was jumping, or he saw something, or he had some he had some impure thought, and that caused him to have a gonorrheic attack, he's not really azav. That's by a man. A woman who's a zava, where blood came out in the period, the 11 days between Nida and Nida. So there she's tamei no matter what. No matter, even if she ate something, whatever caused it, we don't differentiate. Blood came out, she's tamei. But by a man, we check if the gonorrheic attack was due to some outside force. It didn't happen naturally. It happened because something, food that he ate, or sickness that came upon him, or he jumped, or he saw something. So we check him. But it says over there, drachim, b'shiva, that's lashon zachar. Nisne sheva. If you say drachim is a lashon of derech is a lashon nekeva, so say sheva. So there it's mishum k'boy lemisne derech. The reason is because it's derech. Ashkan derech take the lashon zachar. So right we have a stever. First it says, why does it say over there sheva? Because it says drachim and derech is lashon. We find derech is lashon zachar. We just said derech is lashon nekeva. It's a derech yel chuba. How do we find derech is called lashon zachar? But derech echad yetze elecha. In the Tochacha, in Varim, it says what? It's in Kisavo. We have a couple of weeks. It says, they'll come on one path, they will go out to you, and you'll flee from them in 7 different ways. You'll run away. So that's Lashon. Shiva Drachim, we find derech there is called Lashon Zachar. Shiva Drachim, that's a pasuk, right? So first he says that it says Shalosh because it says derech. And derech is Lashon Nekeva, based on the Torah, now he tells you, well, what about by the Mishnah, Shiva Drachim Bod Kenes Azal? Why did it say Shiva? Oh, because we find derech is called Lashon Zachar as it says by the Tochacha. So we have a double steer here. The psukim are in contradiction to one another because the psukim says when it talks about the Torah and the derech of the Torah, it says derech yel chuba, which is Lashon Nekeva. And here it says b'shiva drachim yanusu l'fanecha, which is lashon zachar. So it's derech lashon zachar lashon nekeva. And they have the psuk. So that's the psukim, and we also have the mishnayos because our Mishnah says b'shalosh drachim she can get married, and the Mishnah in Zavin talks about that. It says b'shiba drachim. Sounds like drachim is lashon zacher. So kashu karaya dadi and kashu nami masisa dadi. There's a steer in the brisa, a steer in the Mishnah, a steer in the Psukim. So karaya dadi lokashin. So the Psukim is not a steer. You know why? Here we're talking about the Torah. Derech yelchubah, the derech to walk in the Torah. The Torah is on the keva. How do we know Torah is in the keva? The Torah is Hashem Tmima. God's Torah is pure, right? It's complete and pure. Meshibas Nefesh, restoring the soul. So here it says Torah Hashem Tmima, right? Meshibas Nefesh Tmima is Lashon Nekeva. So since we're talking about the Torah, so Kashav Lashon Nekeva. So Derech is also Nekeva. Now Derech can go either way. If you're talking about the Torah, and the Torah is in the Keva, so we'll say Derech is the Keva. That's why it says Derech Yelchubah. There we talk about war. In the Torah it says you'll be in war. You'll go out to them in one path, and they'll come out to you in one path, and you'll escape. You'll flee from them in seven paths. We're talking about the war. The dark Muhammad. It's the path. It's the normal way of men to make war. It's not the normal path of women to make war. We're talking about men. Therefore, drachim. So drachim could go either way in the Psukim. If we're talking about the Torah, that's lashon nekeva. Therefore, it says, but that's lashon zochar, lashon nekeva rather. If you're talking about the Torah, if you're talking about war is generally waged by men, so it is lashon zochar. What about the Mishnah? The Mishnah is our Mishnah, which is shalosh versus shiva drachim over there by azov. So Masisa Radi also Akasha. We're talking about a woman. Obviously, acquire a woman one of three ways. Koi katan lashon nekeva. Okay, again, we're talking about a woman. Each of these b'shalosh. We're talking about a woman, so we say lashon nekeva because again, the word derech can go both ways. We're talking about a woman, so we'll talk about the lashon nekeva and shalosh. Hasam gabi ish. There we're talking about a man. The darker shalisha body. Who do you check? We just said before, a woman is not checked if she ate something wrong which caused her to be a sava, because she's tummy either way. Even if it was bonus, even if it was by an accident, it was an outside force that caused her to be sick or to bleed. So she's not checked anyway. Who do you check? You only check a man, because if you find that one of the reasons he had the attack was because of one of 7 reasons, including eating too much, drinking too much. Dr. Shalisha body pain. Dr. Shalisha. So who do you check? You check a man. Or check a man. So the Ishanami ba'onis matama. She's tummy even if it was by accident. So Tani Lashon Zachar, therefore it says Lashon Zachar, and it says Shibba Drachim Bo Knesasov. So you understand now these ways. So therefore we understand the difference of the derech is sometimes Lashon Zachar, depending on the context. My time Tani Shalosh Mishum Drachim. Okay. So you're saying over here the reason it said Shalosh and not Shlosha is because it says Drachim. It says Shlosh Drachim. And derech can be in a cave depending on the situation. So in this dvarim, and they say shlosha. Say, why do you talk about derech? Say dvarim, 3 things. The 3 things in which you can marry a woman, keser shtar bia, and then say shlosha. Dvarim is lashon zacher. So you're saying shalosh because of drachim. So don't use the word drachim. Say dvarim. The Bible is say bia, because he wants to tell you one of the ways is bia. Ubia derech is called a way. It's not a thing. It's a way. The way a man with a young woman, with a young maid, came derech the same way with an adulterous woman. So bia is called the derech. So since bia is called the derech, we say shalosh. We therefore use drachim instead of dvarim. And once we use drachim, we use lashon nekeva shalosh. So hatanach bia, that's fine, but bia keser shtar is not a way. It's an instrument. Keser shtar is an instrument. It's a part of a procedure to get married. Bia, you could say, is the way of the world. You know, the way of the world is that bia. Keser shtar ma'ikul meimer. That's only meant. So what are you going to say there? Why those are called the 3 ways are keser shtar bia. Bia could be a way. Keser shtar is not a bia. Okay, it's mentioned drachim because of bia. The tani tartim atuchada. So 2 things, keser and shtar, which are 2, are use a lashon which doesn't apply to them. Derech because of the one item bia where the lashon derech does apply. Tanach nam tzarich bia. But also, even though you're not supposed to get married through קידושין through bia, but eventually keser shtar is going to lead you to bia. That's why you get married. You're going to have bia. So hanach nami tzarich bia, and these are also necessary for bia, and therefore that's why it's called derech. I could tell you the reason why you use a lashon of derech in our Mishnah, and therefore you're compelled to use lashon of shalosh, lashon nekeva, instead of dvarim and lashon zacher. Amani of Shem Gosek of Shem and Tan of Shem and Omer. Why does the Baruch say ki kachishish? Why does it say low cost of kisi lo kachishalish? Why does the Baruch say when a man takes a woman? It doesn't say when a woman is taken to a man. They should Derech is that a man pursues a woman. That's normally the way it is, at least until modern times. Usually the man is the one who pursues the woman, not the other way around. It's not the derech for the man, for the woman, not the normal way. There are exceptions, but it's not the normal way for the woman to pursue the man. Mashal, it's an example of Adam Sha'abdullah Aveda, right? If you lost something, who's looking? Is the item looking for you, or are you looking for the item? Right? Balaveda Machsal Avidaso. The man lost his rib, right? Because Hashem took out a bone, a rib from man and turned it into a woman. So it's like he lost his rib. It's like he's looking for something that he's missing. So that's the normal, that's the mush, that's the example, but that's the way the derech is. So it's the derech of a man to pursue a woman, and that's why we lose lashon of shalosh drachim, because he pursues her, and pursuing her is a derech. It's the derech of a man to pursue, and therefore we use lashon of derech in our Mishnah. And once you use lashon of derech, we go to shalosh because drachim can go either way. And since we're talking about a woman, we talk about the lashon nekeva of shalosh instead of shlosha. But it's not. Okay, again, back to the mission we mentioned before. In 7 ways do you check a zav? If he ate something, drank something, he jumped, he was sick, he carried something, he saw something, or he had some impure thought. Listening to Dvarim, why don't you over there, Dvarim? Can you explain why you use derech over here? Because Bia is a derech, or because, like Shimon says, it's the derech of a man to pursue a woman. So you understand, why over there don't you say drachim? Instead of, why do you use lashon drachim over there? Say Dvarim. Listening to Dvarim. So the darka, the mechla yisera, so it's teaching you that he's teaching you that's the path, that's the way. If you eat too much, we'll come to zipa, you'll become a zav. But Dr. Misha say if you drink too much, also last days up. If you eat too much or drink too much, you'll bring it. There, it's teaching you something. It's not, it could have said 7 things. There are 7 things, 7 ways or things by which you check a zav. Why did he say lashon derech? To teach me that those things, those ways of life, if you pursue those things, if you jump around, you eat too much, you drink too much, it's going to lead to that. But it's not. What about this case? Esrog Shavalilim Begimel Drachim. Rosh Hashanah and Sukkah, right? An esrog is like a tree, meaning what? Then when it comes to Trumas and Maestris, we'll see that what does it go? That's by a tree goes by the time that it blossoms, right? Even though it's only Rabbanan, because Trumas and Maestris is only on the 5 grains and oil and wine, right? But when it comes to, what about an esrog? What about a fruit, like an esrog? So he says, the Mishnah over there says that an esrog is like a tree in 3 ways. Gimel drachim, that's what's going to be bothering us. Listen, why don't you say over there too? And Rashi tells us what are the 3 ways. The Gimel drachim, it's Arla and Rabbi, like an Elon. Ulin and Shvius, you prepare after Chanata, like after the time of blossoming, and not like vegetables where you go based on the time of the harvest. So an esrog is like a tree in 3 ways that Arla and Rabbi apply to it, and Trumas and Maestris you go according to as far as Shemitah goes. You go according to the time of blossoming, like a tree. So why don't you say over there, let's say Dvarim? We shouldn't do the Inan Nasi say because the Sefer is going to say over there Uli Yerek B'derech Echad. And it's like vegetables in one way. What's that? When it comes to Meiser, you go according to the time, because Meiser is different. The 1st, 2nd, 4th, and 5th years, you give Meiser Rishon, Meiser Sheni. In the 3rd and 6th years, you give Meiser Rishon, Meiser Ani. So it depends when. So what's the 2nd year? What's the 3rd year? How do you determine the year? So when it comes to vegetables, you go according to the time of the harvest. When it comes to trees, you go according to the time of the blossoming. Or when it's a 3rd grown, when it comes to grains, it's a 3rd grown. Here it goes according to the time of the harvest. So so the question was, why does it say by Esrog Drachim and say Gimel Dvarim? Oh, because it says the Sefer says Lo Yerek B'derech Echad. So Sefer Namin is the Davar. Why don't you say an Esrog is like the Gimel Dvarim, and it's like a Yerek in one Davar, one thing. So Mashmon there is teaching me the dracheh, or the darkei, the esrog ki yerek, that the reason why when it comes to Meiser, we go according to the time of the harvest, not according to the time that it started to grow, or that it was a 3rd grown. Rashi points out that Meiser Mishtan said Meiser Ani you go according to the time of the harvest. So Hasam Gashmalan, why do you go by estrog? Estrog really grows on a tree. right? So why do you go treat it like a vegetable and you give miser based on the year in which you harvested and not the year in which it grew? So that the path, the way of an esrog is like vegetables. My yerek darker the I'll call mine. Just like vegetables, see grains and vines grow based on regular rainwater. You don't need to irrigate it. You don't need artificial irrigation all the time. But vegetables need artificial irrigation. So just like my yerek darker the just like yerek needs all water, meaning it needs not only rainwater but irrigation water as well. And therefore you give meiser based on the time that it's gathered, that it's gathered in, that it's harvested. Esrog also, even though it's a tree, it needs special irrigation. Esrog, it also needs artificial irrigation. So therefore, it's telling you derech, right? Because it's teaching you the derech. What's the reason why vegetables are vegetables, fruits are fruits. Fruits grow on trees. Why? When it comes to esrog, is it very unique? And when it comes to arla and revi, when it comes to those things, it's treated like a tree. It's treated like a tree. And when it comes to shvius, also it's like based like on a tree, like a tree that you go according to the time of blossoming, and not according to the time of harvest. When it comes to meiser, is it the second year? Is it the third year? Well, when was it harvested? If it was harvested in the third year, it's meiser ani. It's harvested in the second year, it's meiser sheni. Why is that? Because it's like vegetables. Why? It's a tree, but it's like vegetables. Just like vegetables need special irrigation, this is also. Therefore, it's the lashon of derech teaching. So in all these cases, whether by the derech of the isha, why does it say drachim in our mission, not barim? It's telling you that the derech is either like Rav Shimon, that derech is for a man to pursue a woman, or that bia is a derech. By zayin drachim of zav, it's also because the derech is if you eat too much or you drink too much, you become a zav. Or by esrog, because it's the derech to teach you the derech of an esrog tree, that it has a characteristic of vegetables that it needs constant irrigation. And here's another one, vadatanan koi. Koi is a kind of an animal that we don't know if it's a behema or a chaya. If it's a regular animal or a chaya, more of a wild animal. Now, what's the difference? The difference is that if it's a chaya, it needs kisui adam. You have to cover up the blood, just like a bird. You have to cover up the blood after you shechita. But its chaylev is mutter. If it's a behema, the chaylev is usher. You can't eat fat. So what's the rule with koi? There are some ways shavel chaya. Some ways it's like a chaya. Sometimes it's like, in certain ways, certain characters, like an animal. In certain aspects, it's like a chai behema that needs shechita, not like a fish that don't need shechita. In certain ways, it's not a chai behema, in terms of it's not a chai behema, therefore you can't mix it with another breed. It's not a chaya or a behema. You can't crossbreed it. Why don't you say tvarim? There you could say a koi is like three things. It's like a chaya, or certain things. It's like a chaya in the sense of what? It's a suffix. We don't know what it is. We go l'chumra. Certain ways it's a chaya. You go l'chumra. You have to kisi adam. Maybe it's a behema doesn't need kisi adam. Go l'chumra. You need kisi adam. It's like a behema. You can't eat the chayv. So we have the chumras of both because we don't know. The rabbis didn't know is a koya, behema, or a chaya. So you have to put the chumras of both. It needs kisi adam and it needs and chaylev is aser. And there's certain things that it's like both. You need shechita. And there's certain things that it's not like either one, right? That's such a chayv. You can't crossbreed it with anything else because you don't know what it is. Vesu. So why don't you say over there dvarim? Why say drachim? There's no simple answer about su hadatanan. Back in Gittin, we said one of the ways that Gittin Nashim is like Shechari Badim is that you have to say if you bring it from overseas, you have to say it has to be written Lishma for whether it's a Shifra Kananis or whether it's a regular wife. You have to say funny enough as we learned for Lishma or Fedem Suma Kaimo. So that's one of the ways that Gittin Nashim Shechari Badim. You have to say funny enough. One of the ways, yes. Other ways, not. What's the other way? For example, Rashi brings down that once you give it, you can't change your mind. Because since the shichur of an eved is a shchus, the shliach is zochet is mazaket for him right away. To get in the elushav below ba'omer tun gets at least just give this get to my wife or shav shichur to your eved. You say do this. for the Eved, he's going to right away. You can't go back on it. But by the wife, it's not considered a schus to be divorced. Therefore, he could change his mind before it was actually given. Once the get was given to her, she's already free. She's a free woman, and you can't take it back. But over there, it doesn't say nitvarim. This is dvarim. Again, you're trying to say, why did you say shalosh? Because drachim. So say dvarim. Oh, you gave an answer. Say that derech this, that's derech. This is a derech. These other cases of koi, you don't have a reason to say derech. What's the derech there? And what's the derech over here? Ella. So he changes the whole thing. Ella kol echad ika plukta tani drachim. Wherever Rashi learns that plukta means here, there's two things. In certain things, it's like this. In certain things, it's like that. In certain ways, you acquire a woman. In certain ways, she goes free. In certain ways, you check for zav. In other ways, you don't. In certain things, the esrog is like the tree. In certain things, it's like vegetables. When you have certain things one way, certain things another way, then it talks about the lashon of drachim is more proper. That's the proper lashon. Says Varm. That's also the Tani Sefer. There, the Sefer, where Belazar disagrees with the Tanakh about the Esrog. Omer, he says Esrog Shavalil L'chol Davar for all Dvarim. He doesn't make them seem this way and that way. Therefore, you see when it's all certain things, you say there are 10 things, 10 similarities between A and B. Say Dvarim. But if you say it has 4 similarities and 6 dissimilarities, then you say Drachim. That's how the Gemara comes out according to Rashi. Ben Chanel says that Dika Plukta means literally there's machlokas. When there's a machlokas, in all these cases you have machlokas, and some say this, some say that. So when there's a machlokas in the Mishnah, then we say drachim. There's no machlokas to say dvarim, right? So and therefore the lashon of Dekan Ami Tani Sefer of Blazer Amar Esrog Shavli L'chol Davar. How do you explain that? You have to say that there's also machlokas there. Therefore the Tanakama said drachim, because there's a machlokas about it. According to Reina Chananel, plukta means the regular way we understand plukta machlokas between the Tanoim or the Amoraim. Rashi learns that plukta means a difference. You say it has 2 similarities and 4 dissimilarities. When you talk about the different, there's some things that are similar, some things are not, then you use Lashon Drachim. When they're all the same, then you say Lashon Dvarim. All right, we'll pick them here tomorrow. It's Shem from the 2 dots. Have a good day.